What's up, y'all? I'm Gabe, and this is everything I watched this month, September edition. Now, the reason I haven't watched that many things this month is because I've been binging Brooklyn 99, and this show is absolutely fantastic. Let's just start with this. It's easily one of the best comfort shows to watch, and one of the only ones that I found in recent memory that I've actually wanted to continue watching, which is why I spent so much time watching this show. The character dynamics are fantastic and lead to great interactions between them that are not only memorable but also funny and charming. And even when they want to talk about like real life topics that are actually hard to talk about, especially in the last season, like with COVID and George Floyd and all that type of stuff, they still are able to tackle those topics while making it funny and comedic, but still not like making a joke of it. They still take it seriously. They still mention all the stuff that happened about it, why it's bad, how they are working on changing it, and stuff like that. And that's really interesting to me. One thing that this show does great is move the plot forward. Normally with a sitcom show, everything reverts back to day one after the episode ends, the like sort of status quo. But with this show, it has those same efforts, but it actually changes the personalities and future actions that some characters would take. Some examples of this are how in the beginning Amy and Jake are extremely weird around each other because they like each other, but they're busy with work or they're dating someone else, so they try to reason with themselves like, oh, Jake is immature, in order to justify why they aren't together. But seeing them slowly fall in love is just extremely enjoyable and satisfying to watch. You see what they like about each other and why they give each other the time of day and how it inevitably comes together. I also really love the humor in this show, especially with Captain Holt. The way someone will say something like, hey Holt, I got your favorite meal, and he'll respond, ooh, plain toast, is just so funny. I really like that unironic, dry humor type thing. I also really love the different repeating story arcs because they're some of the best episodes in the show, like anything with the Pontiac Bandit, the Halloween Heists, and more. Plus, the show never feels dragged on since the episodes are only 20 minutes each, so whenever you have a little bit of free time, you can watch an episode or two. I really think this is one of the best comfort shows I've ever watched in recent times, and everybody should definitely give it a watch. Next up, I watched My Adventures with Superman, and this was just a nice breath of fresh air for the superhero genre altogether, because it made most of the characters, actually act like normal human beings, with the exception of Clark himself, obviously. Plus, they do a different take on Superman that isn't normally seen, with him not being immediately able to communicate with his dad Ghost, and Lois actually being smart enough to figure out that he's Superman. That's one thing that I really enjoyed. Is normally Lois is just something like kind of an idiot. Like the way she figures out that Clark Kent is Superman is because like Superman will leave his clothes, like his ripped clothes, in the closet, and she'll open it up and find it. So seeing her actually do some sort of like detective work was actually really helpful for the show to like immerse herself and to see how smart she actually is. Also, the action scenes were fantastic because we're not dealing with CGI. So I really like how Superman 2 is learning how to use his powers, so he isn't just absolutely destroying any and everything that comes his way. On top of that, the reveals are nicely paced and the different parts of the finale were good, while still having a well-developed cliffhanger for season 2. The story also demonstrates Clark's kindness by showing him helping ordinary people and even cleaning up after his messes. There's no unnecessary jokes made, and the voice acting is phenomenal. Overall, the show is just fantastic. It's a fresh new take on the superhero genre, and it's really beneficial. I definitely think it's worth a watch. Next up, I watched TMNT Mutant Mayhem, and if animated movies continue to be animated at this top-notch quality, like the Spider-Verse, Mutant Mayhem, and all that other stuff, then there won't be a single animated movie that I will ever dislike. My favorite part about this movie was how the voice actors are actually kids, because the big problem with live-action TMNT movies prior to this is they didn't feel like kids at all. They were like big, broody guys who just, it's like, y'all aren't gonna make Fortnite jokes. Like, what are you doing? Also, the compilation of them growing up was so cute and funny, and the compilation of them learning martial arts and using it in their fights with their own respective martial arts styles was super cool. The fight scenes and animation, of course, as I mentioned prior, were fantastic, and the life lessons learned were very mature for these types of kids' movies. Literally, the only thing bad I have about this movie is the villain is extremely basic and is kind of just like an evil version of them, and their dad's transition from hating humans his whole life to starting to like them felt a little bit rushed. They could have dealt with those issues a little bit better, and I feel like it would have had a lot more impact with the TV show, or with the movie, sorry. Next up, I watched Reality, and I really enjoyed this movie. Some of my favorite movie magic happens in this movie that I love. The minimalistic feel towards everything with what I'm assuming is a budget of like $200,000 or less, probably mainly just working on the cast, helps to add to the realism of the story. The editing with long shots and that sort of glitch effect from Across the Spider-Verse when something was redacted was fantastic and really helped with the mystery, where you kind of have to put the pieces of what you're seeing together and make the story up on your own. And the acting of the three main leads were fantastic. They really played up those characters to where I can imagine that's how those people were acting in real life. I just didn't really like the ending because it felt very abrupt. Maybe like they ran out of money at the very end, so they were just like, okay, what can we do to hurry up and finish this? And then just edited whatever shots they had left. And next up, I watched Talk to Me, and I have a more in-depth review of this on my YouTube channel, but just to sum up my quick thoughts real quick, this movie is probably going to be the best horror movie of the year. There's just so many things that make it better than other horror movies like Megan and Infinity Pool, which is so surprising because it comes from a bunch of Australian YouTubers. Like, for example, the gang actually feels realistic. They feel like a bunch of high school or college kids actually hanging out together. One movie that I related this to in my other video was The Blackening, because they were a bunch of college students who came back after not hanging out for a while, but their chemistry was so off, it felt like they talked once and then sat in silence forever, because it was so bad. Plus, I really like the themes that the hand lays out in where most teenage friend groups start turning to either light drugs or alcohol because they get bored of people, and this sort of acts as their new fix. It's also very similar to the Ouija board, in which tons of people gather around, in which you tap into some potential supernatural spirits, and normally I glanced over it, but the acting chops from especially the main actors are fantastic, and they really help sell that supernatural spirit. I'm not going to dive any more deeper into it, because if you really want to see it, it's definitely a great watch, and if you need a more in-depth review, just check out my YouTube video on it. Next up, I watched A Million Miles Away, and this movie made me surprisingly emotional. There were so many different foreshadowed moments and heart-to-hearts that surprised me when the story is decently simple, to be honest. I say that because this movie kind of has the same story as a few other biopics that I've seen recently, where someone struggles to accomplish their dream, but after a ton of work and dedication, they eventually get that job. This movie didn't do anything wrong necessarily, and I would probably have given it a 5 out of 10 if it didn't make me so emotional while watching, which just shows the acting chops of the main lead. He's one of those actors that you see in a lot of movies, but he never really gets the time of day because he's never really playing that lead role. He's more of a side character. One movie that I could think of with that happening recently is End of Watch with Jake Gyllenhaal in him, because Jake Gyllenhaal is clearly the main focus of the movie, but his counterpart, which is the main character in this movie, does a really good job at being that supporting actor for them, and seeing him break out into this more role by himself with no side characters like that, or at least he's not the side character, is just really great to see. And the final movie I watched this month was Blue Beetle, and I wasn't expecting much coming into this movie after hearing some other people's reviews about it, and I would just have to agree that this movie just feels like the most average superhero movie of all time. Now, there are a few things that this movie does that spices up the rating a little bit, like, of course, the family dynamics are obviously fantastic. This is probably the best depiction of a Mexican family that I've ever seen before, especially George Lopez. He literally stole the show and definitely is the best part of the movie by far. On top of that, the Blue Beetle suit looks fantastic, and I think this has been the best movie so far in terms of the inexperienced hero learning how his powers work. But the problem with this is there's really no point to it. When he's learning how his powers, it's not him learning, it's the suit, quote-unquote, like, calibrating statistics or whatever. So, it's cool to see those scenes where he's learning, but he's never actually learning, so that kind of takes me away from it. Another thing I didn't like was that the movie, in terms of the enemy, is once again just exactly like the original Iron Man. It's just some dude that has the same exact powers as the hero, but now they're evil because of whatever. And the fact that he gets convinced in the last seconds by a heart-to-heart talk is just so annoying, because that same cliche happens in almost every superhero movie. Now, at least when Iron Man came out, for the first time it was a supervillain and superhero fighting each other, it was cool because it was in 2008, nobody had seen that before. But now that this movie's 15 years later, with The Flash and Reverse Flash, Shazam, Black Adam, Superman, and Zod, it just gets boring seeing this superhero fight a supervillain with the exact same powers. It's just very old. I just need something different to spice up my life. And that's everything I watched this month. I know it wasn't a lot because, like I said, I was binging Brooklyn 99. I'm sorry about that. I'll try to watch more movies later. But if you guys have any more movie recommendations, just drop it down in the comments. And if you're still here, thanks for watching. Hope you have a great day. Bye.